Perfect.
Our next move from here is going to be figuring out a shock mount. I'm not totally sure how I want to do that just yet. There is room on the back of the axle. I could mount a shock right here on the back of the axle on the inside. That would work really well. I think that's probably going to be the easiest spot really when I'm sitting here looking at it. So I've got to dig up what's left, because I want to say I cut the factory shock mounts off of here in a way that I could reuse them. So I'm going to find those pieces of metal, and then I'm going to probably have to run down to like Advanced or somewhere. They got like those little shock mounts that you can buy, and I'll go ahead and I'll go down there and I'll buy me 2 of those. That way I've got something that I can mount up here for it to go on. I'll have to figure out what shocks I need as well, which essentially will be once I get all this tacked together. I'll air it all the way up. I'll have to put some air hoses on it, air it all the way up to see how much travel I need with my shock. That way I've got a good idea for how much space that I need, fully collapsed and fully extended. So I'll have to do a little bit of math and sort that out. I'll obviously, keep y'all informed on everything I'm doing here. So that's my next move right now. Find the shock mounts. I'm gonna build out the other side right quick, get it all tacked together, so that then when we come back, we'll be trying to figure out what we're gonna do with some shocks. So we'll be right back in.
Well, I changed my mind on doing the shocks. So I got to looking up back, and I did keep the sway bar. And if you remember, I cut the sway bar mounts off, and we got to put a sway bar on here. Now, I found several different areas that I could put shocks, so I'm not super concerned about that. But I want to see if I can sort out my sway bar situation first, because it can only go a certain couple of places. Now, you can tell these guys have seen better days. You can see right here, kind of put a marker across there, and a mark there. So basically what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go in and cut right there and right there, cut this crap off of each one of them. I'm going to clean them all up and get them, where I can kind of work with them here. Kind of get an idea, get them, I guess just cleaned up, for lack of a better term. So get them cleaned up so we can start kind of figuring out what I want to do sway bar wise, mount wise. Now, over here, in order to sort out sway bar mount, I've got to get the axle off of the skateboard that it's on. So first step in doing that is I'm going to have to jack the frame, the truck itself up. I'm going to have to jack it up high enough so that I can then jack the axle up off of the skateboard and roll her out from under there, and I'll put the axle on jack stands. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to raise the front up a little bit, then I'm going to go on, I'm going to raise the back up because that makes it a little easier to get it out from under there. Put the axle on jack stands, then roll that joker out of there, and the plan would be to put the axle on jack stands with it fully collapsed. Basically where it's sitting right now as far as in location in relation to the frame. So we'll bottom that guy out, then we'll start, I'll get where I can roll under there and start looking at, basically, because what I want to do is mount that sway bar to the bottom, then it'll have end links that come up and attach to the frame. So our sway bar is this big heavy joker right here. I got the end link still, looks nice and terrible, all of it does, but whatever. As long as it works, that's all I care about. So I'm gonna try to start cleaning some of this stuff up, and then we'll start trying to get a plan here.
So, as you can see, not very easy to film where I'm at right now. So, what you see right here, this is our trusty sway bar. So, I went and dug this out of the scrap pile out back. Just a couple things I've been hanging on to that I knew I was going to use eventually. Now, you can see we got the mounts. I got them all cleaned up. I didn't bother to get a picture of them before I stuck them up there. It's kind of one of them deals where I kind of got going working, and I mean, they look just the same way they did look. They're just don't have all the old crappy paint on them anymore and dirt and everything else. So I stuck them up under here. I didn't video it when I did it because hell, there's barely enough room for me to get under here to work, let alone shoot video at the same time. But what I did was I took the saddles for the sway bar. I bolted them to the saddles that go on the axle. I got everything bolted up nice and tight. I went ahead and I found my center line on my bar. I went ahead and I measured and made sure that they were the same distance away from each other, and found the center line on my axle. I measured off the end of the flange on my axle out to where the end of the mount is on the bar. Stuck it up here. I used these quick grips to hold it in place. Then I went ahead and I put I took a piece of wood and stuck it on the outside of the frame rail on each side, quick gripped it on there. I measured the distance from the end of the sway bar to the inside edge of that, made sure that matched so that I knew I was good in center on both. I had it good in center, had the same amount of space on either side. Went ahead and crawled on under here, tacked these bad boys in place. So the sway bar is on. Now, I got to show you what my plan is for the end links because I've had to kind of get a little bit creative. So let's go up here to the workbench where it's a little bit more comfortable for me and a little bit easier for you to see. All right, so back on the workbench. So what we have is our factory end link bushing. Now, from the factory, you got this thing on the bottom and this thing on the top, went like this. Well, it used to have this, which is the same as this, a bushing with like a bolt sticking through it, a stud sticking through it that went there. So my original plan was that I was just gonna press this out and then I was gonna get like a regular end link bushing, like energy suspension or something like that, press it in there with the little collar, I guess. I can't think of a better term right now. And put a bolt through it and use it to bolt in place. And I went and none of the local Advance or O'Reilly's or anywhere like that around here, nowhere had anything in stock. So I got to looking around. I pressed the stud out of one of the bushings. This guy right here. And like that. I pressed it out. I was able to get it out clean. The inside of it's not in too bad a shape, and the rubber itself is not in bad shape. So I just so happen to have perfect size 5/8 bolts with a long enough shank right here so that if I put it through there like that with a washer on the outside to keep it so the bolt won't push through, and obviously put a washer on this side, the threads will stop perfectly so I can tighten it right into the side of the frame. So all I gotta do is put that back in and we'll go like that. So what I'll do is we'll figure out exactly where this guy lands on the side of the frame. We'll mark it. I'll drill a hole. I'll get a nut, just probably just gonna do like a standard nut, and I will I'll make the hole big enough that I can kind of drive that nut in there with the bolt, and then I'll just weld it all the way around because that way all I gotta do is put this up there, boom, zip it in there nice and tight. It's good to go. It doesn't have to be extra super mega tight because that really doesn't matter in this case. And I also want it so that I'll be able to get to it easily. I'll always have tools on this truck. That way, most of the time, the sway bar will stay disconnected. That way, if I want to use my side to side on my airbags, I can, and it won't just be torquing the hell out of that out of this sway bar. I mean, I don't know. We'll see if it still works good with it on there. I'll do it with it on there. I don't care. But this should hold it fine. That's a 5/8 bolt. It shouldn't shear that. It only had a 1/2 inch bolt in it from the factory, so I think we'd be good to go with that. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get to work. I'm gonna get this other bushing pressed off of there and get it ready to go. And then we'll jump over here on the frame and figure out exactly where I wanna mount this thing. Because basically what we're gonna do is where the axle's sitting right now, it is as if the truck is all the way sitting full bump. So I'm going to drop the axle down about 4 inches. Then I'm going to set my sway bar, anti-sway bar, whatever, I call it sway bar. I'm going to set it where it's parallel to the bottom of the frame. That way when I'm at, that's my projected ride height. So that way when I'm at my projected ride height, the sway bar is going to be at its optimum use point right there. So that way if it's sitting all the way down, hell, I don't care if the thing's aimed up a little bit or if it's aimed down a little bit. That doesn't matter when it's aired all the way out. So, all that being said, I'm going to go push this bushing out and then we'll come back when it's time to kind of figure out what we're going to do on the side of the frame there and kind of show you. I told you what my thought process is, but I'm going to show you too. So, let's get it. I can do that twice. It's perfect, 2 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this hole right here. Then we'll find the center. Go ahead, I'm going to bolt that other one in, make sure it kind of lines up the same way. And man, we should be good to go. It sits like perfectly flush against the frame rail too. So that's going to, and that worked out absolutely perfect. I cannot believe that came out that nice. And it'll clear my link arms real good and everything. So that is more than exciting right there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll throw that one on the other side over there, and then we'll come back. We're ready to mark some holes and get ready to do some drilling. Alright, so now I've just got to essentially mark where I want my hole here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw me a circle around the hole inside of this bad boy right here. Then we'll let it down. We'll measure where the dead center of that circle is. We'll mark it. We'll drill it. And we'll go to the other side. Do the same thing. Actually, I'll just measure where this one is. I've actually got the other side sitting, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace it too. But then I'll measure where this one is. Make sure they're both lined up the same. Make sure all the angles are the same and everything before I go drilling holes. And then I'm going to I've kind of changed my game plan a little bit with how I'm going to attach it. I'll show you that here in just a second. It's probably easier for me to kind of show you and tell you all at the same time. So let me go over here and check and make sure the other side, make sure all the angles are good on everything, mark it, and then we will see if everything's going to line up and play nice the way we want it to. Yep, perfect there. So now I'll take it off the jack stand. Let that sway bar, we'll just let it kind of swing down and out of the way for right now. Now we got our hole, get our measuring tape here. Actually, I don't want to use a measuring tape on this one. I think I'm just going to use some straight edge. Now this thing could be easier to read. It is exactly 1 inch across. Golly, the things are. What lines are so hard to read on this stupid thing? Why are they so hard? So, there's half. And there's half. So right there. All right, so now I gotta try to figure out what's gonna be the best way to measure this to see if it's gonna, I don't know about it. I don't know if it'll work or not, but we'll try to stick a piece of wood to the bottom of the frame right here and measure it and see. Let me find a piece of wood right quick. Shouldn't be too hard around here. There's usually one laying on the floor somewhere. This will work. Trusty piece of plywood. I mean, hell, with the lumber market the way it is today, this is probably worth about 60 or 80 bucks. So we are exactly 2 5/8 of an inch. Let's see what the other side looks like. The downside of this is if the bottom of this frame isn't just bent perfectly the same. Oh, it's not. I can tell you already it's not. Not even close to the same. Yeah, that sucks. So, that begs the question, which is right? Ugh. I guess I'm going to have to stare at this and ponder for a minute what the best solution is. Alright, so after a little bit of staring, a little bit of figuring, so I got my trusty level. Frame rails, when I go right here where the C-notch is, are perfectly level across. So if I measure down from the frame rail to the center of my bolt hole right here, I'm at, I believe it was 5 7/8. Yeah, I'm at 5 7/8. So, and I kind of like the location of this hole, so I decided to kind of use it for my baseline. And I've still got my center line marked right here for where my bolt holes are for my link arm. So that gave me a good measuring point to measure from. So basically I measured back and I am where I was with the original hole that I marked. I was sitting at roughly 15, pretty much exactly 15 inches. So over there, I was at, I think, 15 and a half. So basically, it was back a ½ inch more than this one. Now, I knew pretty much as soon as I saw that where I went wrong with that, because basically, I took a plasma cutter when I cut those saddles off the axle originally and just kind of hacked them off. And then when I cleaned them up, I just kind of roughly cleaned them up with a grinder. And obviously, that's not super precise. Then, when I stuck them up under there, I just kind of clamped them up there in place. And once I got them tacked, I did notice that one was kind of back a little bit further on the axle than the other. Thought, maybe it won't be such a big deal. I kind of eyeballed it. I'll admit, I kind of eyeballed it. And when I looked at it, I could kind of tell that that one was rolled back on the axle a little bit farther than this one. So essentially, we got a ½ inch of difference between the two, which is not a huge problem. Honestly, I could just drill the holes and I could make it work, but I'm not really interested in just kind of making it work when I have it's not final welded in, it's just tacked in place. So we have the opportunity to fix it and make it exactly right. So that's exactly what I plan to do. So essentially, we've got a ½ inch of total difference between each side. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1/4 of an inch out of each side. I'm going to extend this one out to 15 1/4. I'll bring that one forward to 15 1/4. So they'll both be dead in the same spot. So what I did here is I measured down. I'm going to mark them both sides the exact same distance down from the top of the rail, both at 15 1/4 back here. That way all of our measurements match up. I'm going to go ahead and center punch the hole, and I'll drill it, and we'll go ahead and we'll get our end links bolted in place here. Then I'll cut my tacks loose on the axle. Then we'll be able to have this bolted in, and it'll actually be hanging by the links, and I can have them tightened up so it'll kind of hold it in place. I'll be able to rotate the sway bar up to the axle and kind of quick grip it in place. Then I can move them independently to make sure that once my link arms or once my end links are both perfectly parallel where I want them, then I can tack it in place where I want to be. Probably would have been a good idea to have done that in the first place, but I didn't exactly know where these end links were going to hit. And I just put, I think, 2 tacks on each side. So it's not really that big of a deal. It's a pretty easy fix. So now I just got to center punch these, and we'll drill them out. And what I'm actually probably going to do initially is I'm just going to drill them 5/8 so they'll fit the bolt that I've got. I'll stick the bolt through, I'll put a nut on the inside that kind of holds it in place. Then we'll go through all that, get it tacked in place. And then once everything is all fine and good, I'll drill it out the rest of the way so it'll fit the nut that we're gonna use to do from there. So let's make our final measurements and get to some center punching and some drilling. Real funny story about this. I was just thinking about this. So when I had my buddy cut out these pieces for my C-notch, they didn't have any in normal mild steel, but he's like, I can cut it in AR 500, not a problem, as long as you're not gonna break it. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna break it, it's no problem. Well, for those of you that don't know it, AR 500 is actually bulletproof. So it just occurred to me that drilling this might be a real pain in the ass. Then again, I mean, I don't know, it might be one of the deals where sometimes you get it where it's hardened, but it's easy to grind and drill. Or sometimes all you do is just eat drill bits up. So I don't know, we're gonna see. I can tell you this much, if it gets too hard to drill, I will take that plasma cutter and I will blow a hole right in it. But hopefully it'll drill okay. I do have a drill bit sharpener, so if it starts giving me too much of a fit, you know, I can sharpen drill bits, but hopefully not too, it won't give me too much problems. I'm gonna find out.
All right, so pretend that you just watched me time-lapse through drilling 2 holes in the frame, which honestly wasn't that bad. It actually drilled pretty good. And you see I threw the bushings in them and threw the bolts in them, and I've just got a standard nut on the top. Now I've got 1 spot weld on the front on here, 1 on the back. Over here I've got 2 on the front and 1 on the back. Now my next thing that I'm going to do here, now believe it or not, let's see here, let me get you moved correctly here.
Now, believe it or not, after they're bolted in, there is only 2 degrees of difference between this one and that one over there, between this end link and that one. I really, you know, that's nothing. It's not going to affect how that sway bar functions at all. But I guess I'd kind of be a bit of a hypocrite if, you know, I talked about aim small, miss small, and all that. If I could fix it just as easily as popping a couple of spot welds and then just put some quick grips on it and tacking it in the right place. So, with that being said, we're going to get under here and cut these damn tack welds loose, and I'll put some quick grips on it to hold it in place, and then we'll move it till we get these dudes perfectly in place the way that we want, get them all matched up, and then get them retacked in place, and then we'll be ready to mount some shocks. So I'm going to get some safety glasses and get in here and cut these stupid tack welds loose. Hopefully I didn't do a very good job. Actually, I know I did a good job because I didn't want to go anywhere. So this is not going to be fun. Alrighty. Let's see. 88.1. Bring us up from 88.1 over there. Let's see, I don't want to be 90 degrees because I wouldn't be 90 to the floor. So where am I at now? 3.4, so 86.6, I think, would be parallel. How's that sound? Sound pretty good? No way! It's 86.6. Well, that's pretty cool. So, let's see what that side looks like then. So, it was 88 something just a second ago. Alright, so what we're going to need to do is take this side back. So, let's see if I can just roll it back, maybe. Oh, well, that's actually not too terrible. I actually moved quite easily. Wasn't quite prepared for that. And I'm sure the other side is probably moving equally as much the opposite direction as I'm doing this. Let's see where we're at here. If we can meet them in the middle somewhere. Oy. Start formulating a plan for some shocks. We'll go ahead and tack the rest of this in off camera. Got one on each side. Got them all sitting there right. So I'll get these tacked in right quick. Actually before shocks, but I got to figure out surely what I'm going to do for nuts in the size of the frame here. Get this tacked in. I'll come back straight what I'm going to do to bolt these things in kind of permanently yet still removable. Alrighty then. Alright, so got our area all wiped off here. So here's the plan. So obviously those end links are made with they have the bushing inside them, and because it had a stud that went through it, it didn't have a steel bushing inside it. So basically you can't just put a normal bolt through it, because if you do, you'll just squeeze it all the way up until it's just till the washer hits the steel that holds the bushing, the tubing I guess, and then tightens that into the frame. So then the bushing's not really doing anything at that point. So what you have to do is you have to find a bolt with a long enough shank that's not threaded, that is really pretty much just exactly what you need to get it tight without just over squeezing the bushing. Luckily enough, I actually had that here. This is not it. So my plan is, because what I can do, I can actually reach in from the inside of the C-notch right here, and I can actually put a nut on the back side of that, and I can tighten it up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a standard nut that the bolt will tighten up to, because if I put a bolt all the way through and just tighten the nut on the inside, obviously it's not gonna hit the shank right there, so it's just gonna keep tightening until it tightens it all together. So what I'm actually gonna do is, the nut is the exact same diameter, exact same shape and diameter as the head of this bolt. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of quick scribble around this. Just like that. So now I can see exactly how much area I need to take out, because basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a standard nut, I'm going to cut this hole big enough that that nut will just fit inside and fit flush to the side of the frame right here, and then I'm going to weld that dude in there. That way when I put a nut on the back side of it, I can tighten the bolt all the way up and snug it to that nut. That way it won't over tighten, because the non-threaded part of the shank will tighten to that nut before it fully clamps down on that bushing. It'll actually all be tight, but it won't be over squeezing my bushing, so my bushing's still doing what it needs to do. Then I can come on the inside and I'll put my lock nut on the inside. That way none of it goes anywhere. And like I said, this thing is going to spend most of its life probably zip tied to the side of this link arm anyway. I really just want the sway bar on here. That way when I am towing something, a heavy load or something like that, I've got that little bit of, anti-roll on it. Just that way if my load tries to shift or something like that, that way I'm still more stable, which is the whole point of having a dually anyway. So basically what I got to do now is I got to cut this hole out big enough on each side. That way I can slide that nut in place and weld that guy on there. So let's get to cutting. I'm trying to decide right now if I want to just use a plasma cutter. I'm leaning toward the plasma cutter. I could drill it, but I don't know if I have anything that'll drill a hole that big, especially that deep, because not only is it the 1/4 inch thick AR500 on the outside of the frame rail, but it's also the 3/16 thick, actually no, I think it was 5/16 inch thick frame rail itself. So that would take a big drill bit. I don't have one that size, because that would be probably a 1-inch drill bit. Probably gonna use a plasma cutter. Leaning towards plasma. Let's do that. I guess I'm gonna give it a start with this unibit that I got. See what kind of good I can do. Phew. Well, that actually went very, very well. The only downside to that is it only goes to 7/8, and I think 1 inch is going to be the perfect size that I need. Now, the reason why I wanted to use the unibit instead of using a plasma cutter is because if I use the unibit, it stays centered on the hole, and all the trouble that I went to get the holes marked the same size, you know, is still worthwhile, because even as good as I might be with a plasma cutter, I'm never going to be able to cut that just directly the size that it's supposed to be. So now I've just got to sort out I gotta see if I can find a unibit that goes up to 1 inch. I used what I had. It's not going to be big enough. See if I can find a unibit that goes up to 1 inch, and then that should get us home from there, because then I can put it in and I can tighten it against it, tack that guy in, and I can run a bolt into it. That way it protects the threads, weld that guy up all the way around. So I'm gonna run to Home Depot and see if maybe they have one, and I hope they do, because if not, I'm gonna have to get a new plane. Okie dokie. So it's funny how things work sometimes. So last night is when I drilled this much of this hole right here. My plan was to put the nut inside it so that I could tighten it all the way, just run it all the way through it, and the bushing would butt up to the frame right here, and then I was going to put this lock nut on the other side so I could tighten it up and everything would hold and be right. Well, I left and I went and got the bit that I needed. Home Depot had it. Well, in the process of just overnight, by the time I got home, it was kind of late, and I went on inside and called it a night. Well, I got to thinking about it overnight, and I thought to myself, well, this is a lock nut, and it's got a nice, a good kind of like washer made onto it, I guess. I don't know what else. I guess you could say made onto it. So I thought to myself, well, why don't I just make the hole big enough so that I can just countersink this nut into the frame itself and leave this kind of proud just a little bit, this washer, and stick it in there, and then I can just weld it all the way around. And well, all I gotta do is just tighten the bolt right into this, and you know, I guess I just kind of overthought it and you know, kind of over-engineered, I guess. So I was on my way to doing that anyway. So now I'm just gonna drill this hole big enough to get the hex part of this nut inside this hole right here, and then once I get that in there, I'm gonna tap this in place. I'm just gonna weld this dude all the way around. So back to drilling, the fun part. So I'm gonna get this drilled, and then we'll come back and ready to tack her in place and kind of show you what's going on. All right, so I went ahead and I shot the hole about as big as I could get it. I guess I could go a little bit deeper in there. But I got it where right now, you see, I used my belt sander and I went around it and I kind of knocked the corners off the top of the nut right here. So what I'm hoping for is, because with the shape of the bit, obviously it's shaped like a cone. So obviously the further we go back in there, the more the size of the hole shrinks down. Well, I kind of taper the end of the nut right here. So what I'm hoping for is that I can stick it in here. And right now I'm probably 1/4 of an inch from it being bottomed out. So I'm hoping that I can take and I can pop it with a hammer a couple of times, and it'll kind of grab into the metal and kind of gall up, so I can drive it in and hold it nice and tight against the side of the frame. That way when I come back and weld it, it'll be good and strong. So we'll hit it a couple times with a hammer here and see if it comes in there the way I want it to. So far, no. That AR 500 is holding pretty good. Yeah, no, all right, so I guess what I'm just gonna do, I'm gonna take my belt sander and I'll knock the corners off of this just a little bit more. That way it'll sit in there nice and snug. I don't have to take too much off of it. So I'm just gonna knock the high spots off the corners here, and then we'll come back and hopefully set it in there and weld it. Hopefully it'll go better than that time did. All right, so a little bit of, definitely had to go after a little bit more with the belt sander. Now you see I did go ahead and tighten the bolt all the way through. This is a pinch lock nut. So I didn't want to just barely tighten into it to protect the threads and then weld it in and then try to go and tighten the bolt through it and it not allow that end of it to open up enough so the bolt could go through it. So I went ahead and I tightened it on through there enough. Now I can kind of tap it, drive it in pretty much where I want it. Pretty happy with that. Still got a little rock and roll. I don't really understand why. Oh, there it goes. Alright, now it's on there, and of course it tried to pull it out there a little bit from this other side. Drilled in there good. Alright. Well, she is in there like swimwear. Now you can see how that shoulder, the bushing should sit right against it. Should be good. Now it is sticking out off the frame, probably 1/8 of an inch proud, and that will kind of put it at a little bit of an angle, but nothing that I'm really concerned about. So go ahead and burn this guy in.
ISO. Let's get it. Whoa, clear out the room, I'm coming through. They wanna see what I'm about. Yeah, I got skills, do it for the thrill. I'm on a
That guy is on there. So now I'll just take a grinder. I got like a little tiny nugget right there. I'll knock that little nugget off of it. And that way it's nice and flat. Sweep up the floor right here. Go do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll be ready to bolt these two guys on, and then it'll be time to start thinking about some stuff for some shops.
extra, read about it. I'm today's trending topic. I put commas over bullshit. Yeah, I put that on mamas. They tryna block all my blessings. They thought I lost for stepping. I bet on me and my team. ISO is what I'm repping. Put on for the whole city. Yeah, I got them rocking with me. I bet on me and my team. ISO is what I'm repping. Sending emojis. I'm blowing a pack of that OG.
And there you have it. Ooh, oh buddy. Alright, so we got, which will be easier? I'm gonna guess putting the top in. So we got our nuts all welded in, both sides. So I'm gonna stick my end links on, start the nuts, just kind of leave them hanging for right now. Let me go grab my other one, stick it on the other side. Now the one thing about these 5/8 bolts going through this bushing, they are snug. So I'm gonna put a little PB blaster on it, that way it'll just kind of go through there a little easier, won't grip on my bushing so badly. Little bit of looby dooby. Now in theory, you should just be able to start these, leave them hanging. You should be able to lift it right up and start the 5/8 bolts, put them jokers right on in there. In theory. If I've done everything correctly, hopefully I have. There we go. Started nice and easy. Oh yeah. Both sides started nice and easy, went right together. So I'm gonna call that good. Now I'm not going to cycle the suspension and everything because everything is just tacked in place with the exception of those nuts I just welded in the frame. Everything else is just tacked in place. Don't put way too much load on everything, start breaking tack welds loose, and I ain't trying to have to go back to square one on any of this crap because it took too long to get to this point. So next up is shocks. Man, hey, we get shocks done, then all we gotta do is throw a little bit of bracing on this cross member right here. Be time to take it all apart, do all the final welding and painting on it. That is all the excite. Woohoo! All right.
Acting like you know me, and if you did, that's the old me. Winter time, rock a cold fleece. Pocket fat, that's obese. Only talking money if it's increased. She give me brain, girl, no.